Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pastured Pig Podcast. Again, appreciate everybody taking the time to listen and to participate. I appreciate the reviews. We've gotten several ratings and a review, I believe, on iTunes. And I appreciate you guys doing that. Again, that helps others find us. Before I get into our discussion with our guest, I wanted to just give some updates. Here at Red Tool House, we are planning on breeding two of our proven sows. They've produced well in the past. We're going to breed those. In fact, I believe we do AI, so I believe my semen is due in on Friday. It's now Tuesday when I'm recording this. So we'll be having that shipment come in soon. We should have standing heat in both sows. I believe next Monday is what I have recorded. So that's the game plan. So we'll breed them. I'm actually on the back of the property right now. We have 100 acres in southern West Virginia. Very, very hilly, very mountainous. On the back of the property, kind of just exploring. We farm just on the front 10 acres. I really don't do much back here, but just like a nice walk through the woods. We've had a lot of heat lately, but today it's only in the mid-70s as a high. So I'm enjoying this wonderful evening in the cool air, low humidity, just enjoying a nice stroll through the woods. And to me, that's what a lot of this is about. It kind of justifies all the work you put into having land and raising animals, so you can just enjoy the land when it's not the hectic times. Well, our guest today has actually been on the podcast already, so I know it kind of looks like we're repeating, but some of our guests have such great information, we wanted to bring them back, have some additional discussion. So today I have David Crafton back on. And David has some really good insight about breed selection. And we talked about this a little bit when we interviewed him previously. I'll link to that podcast, previous podcast below. I think it was our second podcast, but I'll link to that in our show notes. But David is actually working on his own breed, coming up with his own breed of pastured pig down there in South Carolina. He's had some great success working with some specialists from Clemson, I believe, and having some good success there. So he's going to talk specifically about breed and breed choice and the importance of that. So let's dive right into that conversation. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Pastured Pig Podcast. So glad you all could join us for this next episode. And I realize I say this every time that I'm always excited with this next interview I have, and I'm excited a lot, I guess. But really have been lucky to have some really good interviews here, and really anxious to get all these out so you guys can hear them. But we've come back to one of our guests that we've interviewed already, and we're going to dive deeper into some specific topics here. But I'm excited to have David Crafton back on from Six Oaks Farms. And if you recall, David was interviewed back in episode 3 that aired back in the beginning of June. So if you want to know the deeper details of what's going on at Six Oaks Farms, then you can go back and listen to episode 3. But today I have David, and we're going to talk specifics about breed and genetics. So welcome to the podcast, David.
Thank you, Troy. Nice to be here.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming back. I'm glad I didn't run you off the first time, and you were willing to come back and go for round 2. Well,
now we're good to go.
All right. Well, it's one of those things in episode 3 when I was going back and listening and going through my notes, I have to confess that it was one of those interviews where you're talking to somebody and you're like, okay, this is really good. So I started doing more research on on you, David, afterwards, and I'm like, wow, I really didn't realize who I was talking to as far as the experience goes in pastured pigs. So it's one of those things I felt, wow, I need to come back and ask him even more questions, because it's just a treasure to have your wealth of information, and I appreciate you sharing that with everyone. So let's dive right in. So if you don't mind, for people that maybe haven't heard episode 3 or just coming in line with the podcast right now, could you give us the 40,000-foot elevation explanation of what you've got going on down there in South Carolina?
Yeah, I'm raising pastured pigs, and I've been doing it full time for going on 6 years now. Or I'm coming up on 6 years, and I did I raised some beef before that, part time. I work full time as an electrician, commercial electrician, project manager, and wanted to get out of that life. So I switched to full time, moved to South Carolina, and started my new life that way.
Excellent. And how many acres are you on in South Carolina?
I'm on 40 acres at this location. I'd actually just moved because I'm trying to expand as quickly as I can. Little better layout, same size land, but I still had the other place. But this place is 40 acres. About 22 of it is fenced currently. I'm still working on some of that. I got a little bit more to put up, but I'm getting close. And I also raise some cows for beef, and I got a couple sheep and chickens and that sort of thing going on as well.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so when we talked last time, we talked about how you'd had a beef operation in Maryland, I believe it was, and had
Right.
a lot of experience doing that. Moved to South Carolina, really got into pigs. What just so people know, what was your motivation for transitioning and kind of focusing more on pigs? Because you say pigs are probably more of your focus now than other animals.
Yeah, they have been almost from the start. I was going to raise beef cows when I came down here. Hadn't really thought that much about pigs, but I got a few, and I did a bunch of research before I got them. There wasn't a whole lot out there about pastured pigs. As far as people sharing information, Walt's one, and I thank him for that. He's been an inspiration, but it's just there's a lot of gaps to fill, and once I got to pigs, I had no problem selling piglets and the ones that I raised out, and it just kind of blossomed from there. And frankly, at the time, I started making more money off the pigs than the cows. And I pretty well sold out of the cows and just to focus on the pigs, because it was a big project, and and knowing as little as I knew going into it, I had a lot of research to do and a lot of learning along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing that impressed me, and we were discussing last time, was you're talking about the amount of you're a farrow to finish operation, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, and but a large quantity of the pigs that you farrow out, you're actually selling as feeders, and you're shipping at a pretty good distance.
Yeah, mostly up and down the East Coast. We've had some go out towards Ohio, on Illinois, but mostly from Alabama and Florida up through northern Pennsylvania. I think I had one customer up in Rhode Island.
Yeah. So you're seeing an increased demand in your genetic line and the pigs that you've been raising. You're seeing an increased demand. That's the majority of where your pig operation is headed. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. I'm sold out of pigs till at least fall, probably in the winter at this point.
Wow.
I'm not complaining, but I'm ramping up as fast as I can.
Yeah.
To satisfy the demand. But what I can offer them is consistency. A lot of these places are selling to, restaurants and chefs. They want a specific thing, but a place up in rural Pennsylvania might have a demand for 50 pigs a year to finish for these kind of places, but they have to go to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different farms to get that quantity of pigs to raise out. Now the breeding, the genetics is going to be all over the place, so they're not able to deliver consistent product. So if they get it from me, for one, my price is very competitive with what they're paying already. We deliver them to their door, literally. They'll get the same thing every time. It's going to grow the same. It's going to eat the same amount, and the meat's going to turn out that beautiful, red, well marbled pastured pork that everybody, is demanding.
Exactly. Yeah. I see another podcast in the future, if you allow me to bug you again, just talking about pig
Sure.
logistics, being able to ship pigs and like you say, staying competitive, keeping the pricing
Right.
where it needs to, but being able to ship those distances and the consistency
Mm-hmm.
there and the logistics that go along with that. That's incredible. But that won't be our focus today. What I'd like to jump right into, David, if it's okay, is so you kind of had a key point there that people, your hogs that you're raising, the piglets that you're raising out, are in high demand because of the consistency, because of what they're seeing in your breed line. So let's jump right into that. So is this, and I know the answer to this question, it's kind of a hypothetical question or a facetious question, is was this just luck? Was this dumb luck? Did you happen to find just the right pig blend and then bang, you just ran with it? Or how much work did you put into getting to where you are now with your breed line?
I started out the same way they did. I was buying pigs from all over the place, really. You know what I mean? And I had to build up from there, but things moved along so quickly for me. As far as selling pigs and piglets and right up to the meat, that I've always been expanding. There's not been a time that I've done this where I've not really been trying to expanding, even outside of pigs a little bit, with the beef and the sheep and that sort of thing, because that's what customers want now. So, it's always been an ongoing, growing thing. But where I'm at now with it is because I've done the research and I've applied it, to real life. I've come up with a cross that just works. It just works real well, and I'm able to get that consistency. But I went through a lot of pigs before I got, what I want now. I'm pretty satisfied with what I've got now, and I intend to stick with it because it does work. But I've never really felt like that up until probably the last maybe 2 years or so.
Yeah,
it's always been an ongoing, thing. I've tried different boars. I've tried different, sows and gilts, and I was kind of demanding of them, which, my sows farrow on pasture. You know what I mean? They have shelters they can use, but generally they don't. They usually go up under a tree away from the herd. That's just how they are, and that's fine, and they do really well. And my loss rate is around 3%.
Wow.
My piglets loss rate is about 3%. That's not bad for farrowing on pasture.
No doubt.
So you know what I mean. So I've had time over the years, and fortunately, pigs reproduce fairly fast.
Yeah.
So so I've been able to move things along until I found what I got going on now.
Well, that 3% loss rate, I mean, there's a lot of people that would argue and say the only way you can achieve 3% loss rate or in that range would be farrowing crates in a more confined operation. And you're proving that that's not the case right here. That's awesome.
Actually, the farrowing crates create just the opposite of what you want in a pastured pig. A farrowing crate is a handicap for that pig. They're handicapping that pig because if you take that pig out of that farrowing crate and put it on pasture, chances are she's not going to raise that many piglets because they're used to being in that crate. They're used to not being able to move around. They just don't know how to handle piglets in a more natural environment.
Right.
So, they're breeding that talent, because pigs are very talented mothers if you let them be, and if you select for it, they get really good at it. Hence the 3% loss rate. Yeah. But so they're instilling exactly the opposite of what a pig really needs, for a good survival rate for a piglet.
Yeah, very good. All right. So, so when you got started, what was your education, or what was your inspiration? What kind of guided you to say, okay, I've got this sow, or I've got this gilt, and I've got this boar. She had this type of litter. These are the results of that. What was your parameters or your guidelines to say, okay, this was a success, or this is an area we needed improvement?
So the way that I did it was maybe backwards of that. I actually went, and in order to get a good cross, I feel like you got to start out with good terminal breeds. So my thing is I use large black boars in my herds, and I breed them to Tamworth and blue butt sows. A blue butt sow is a cross between pretty much any dark pig and a York sow.
Yeah.
And they come really different colors too. I've got a couple red butts out there too. But yeah, and what I did was people kind of put pigs in two categories. They're either lard pigs or lean pigs, right? So a lard pig's going to be something like Gloucester Old Spot or Guinea Hog, or something like that. And a lean pig's typically going to be the more what they call developed breeds, like Yorkshire, a commercial type breed.
Yeah.
I was looking for something kind of in between the two, because I didn't really care for lean pork. We've all had lean pork. It's not good.
Yeah. That's right.
And the lard is, too much for some people, and I feel like as far as like, if you look at it in a sense of marketing, you got to take what people were used to, and my pork weans them off of that. You know what I mean? So it looks that, it has a certain look to it and everything. It's not pasty white, and I point that out in the marketing, so that's something I'm looking for. There's other factors there, other than genetics, there's feed and that sort of thing. But so generally what I did was I went and I tried a couple of different boars here and there. I tried just blue butts. I tried Duroc boars. I've tried Gloucester Old Spot, York. A Hampshire. I tried a Hampshire boar for a while, but what I ended up with was large black boars. And in the time that I was doing these experiments or whatever, and developing, what I wanted, or trying to develop what I wanted, you come to a point where you got to stop and look around, and you're like, okay, you got to set goals. Okay, so these goals that I want, fat 1-inch fat cap on my pork chops. I want them to have marbling to them. I want the piglets to have good temperament. They got to perform well on pasture, that sort of thing. One of the breeds that I found that had most of those traits was large black. The problem with the large black is they grow slow. Well, anytime you cross one pig to another pig, you get that hybrid vigor, and they tend to grow a little faster. So large black is more or less an in-between pig, and I'm breeding them to the Tamworths, which is another kind of in-between pig. They're not really lean, they're not really large, and the same thing with the blue buds. So that's where I'm getting the meat thing. But the large blacks, they just bring a lot to the table. Their temperament is amazing. They marble at an earlier age, so even smaller carcasses, like barbecue-sized carcasses, are going to have marbling in the meat. Not a whole lot, but more than a typical pig would.
Yeah, which is huge.
Yeah, they got to be able to get to a 1-inch fat cap by the time they get to be, 250, 275 pounds. I'm looking for 14 to 16 teats. The other thing that I've done a lot of looking into is taint. That smell of typically boar meat. I did a lot of research into that, and that was a big part of my development. I generally don't castrate males that I'm keeping for myself, because I can manage them away from, sows or gilts that I don't want pregnant.
Right. Yeah.
Not everybody can do that. Not everybody has that kind of space, and I understand that. But it's still nice to have the options and not have to cut them, because that has its own benefits.
Exactly.
I found that an intact boar eats about 10% less and gains about 10% more on the same amount of feed as a gilt or a barrow.
No
usually.
kidding.
Yeah, in most cases. And in particular with what I'm doing now, that's been about the average. So I'm feeding them 10% less feed and getting them to a 10% heavier weight on less feed than I'm feeding, the gilt or the barrow next to them.
Oh yeah, that's what you like to see on paper.
Right, exactly. So I mean, and when you get the herd sizes like what I'm working with now, that stuff gets a little touchy. You want to save some money on feed wherever you can, and if you can breed a pig that's efficient anyway, which they are, then that's a good step forward.
Excellent. Well, man, wow, there's a lot there to unpack. So it sounds to me like your criteria that you have for whether you're keeping a breeding pair or a breeding sow or a breeding boar is a pretty extensive list. So this is more than just one or two items on a checklist. This is everything, like you said, from conformation to temperament to how they handle, to all the way up to even post processing, where you're examining the processing results of that pig.
Right.
So you've got that going on, and that's a pretty huge list that goes a long time. And I mean, you're dealing with multiple breeding sets here at any given time, right?
Right.
How many do you normally are you breeding at a time?
I have 4 herds that I breed.
Yeah.
So they're all in some stage of pregnancy, gestation, or feeding out piglets or weaning, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They're busy. They do get a break. You know what I mean. I usually give them about 30 to 45. It depends. Some of them are a little different. Some of them require a little bit longer. But to put a little bit of weight back on or get a little bit back into condition. I have a pen that I separate my sows into that the boars can't get to at all.
So how do you keep track of all that, David? I mean, with all of those animals, with all the different points that they're in their gestation, and even all the way to following to processing. I mean, are you a pen and paper guy? Do you have a spreadsheet? Do you have a team that helps you? How do you manage all that?
I'm a pen and paper guy. I write a lot of stuff down on my calendar that's hanging over my desk.
Gotcha.
So and another funny thing, and it's actually not a bad tip, especially when you get more than a couple breeding animals of any kind. When I see them out there breeding, I'll take a picture of it, because that picture is always going to be in my phone, and I'll always know the date that sow was bred.
Isn't that great? I love it. That's the thing and I agree 100%. That it'd crack you up, if you went back to your grandpa who was a farmer and say, "What's the best tool you can have on the farm?" 2 generations from now, it's a phone. They'd laugh at you, but absolutely.
Right.
So how do you? So
I'm getting to the point. Part of that whole thing with expanding though is I've been saving a lot of gilts back. That's part of the benefit of having 4 herds, because they're genetically independent of each other. So for a long time, I can take a gilt from one herd that I want to, for a replacement gilt or just to bump up, and put it in. I can go from pasture 4 to pasture 1, and then eventually the only thing I ever have to change out is the boars.
Yeah.
Once they're spent.
Okay. So, wow, that's pretty cool. So looking at that process, you have your phone that you take some pictures of. How are you identifying the individual gilts and sows in the pasture? Are you tagging them? Do you notch them? What's the physical identifiers out there?
No, I'm not doing any of that yet.
So you just know that's boar number 1, and he's a good dude because of this, and then this is okay. That's excellent.
I'm you know what I mean. I can pick a boar out there. My biggest boar, he's 960 pounds. He's my oldest one too. He's not that old actually. He's still breeding, but he's he I can tell you everything about him. I can tell you the day he was born. You know what I mean? I can tell you the little, different marker that he has on his one foot that makes him stand out from, all that stuff. And I'm like that with most of the sows too. Now I'm getting to the point, with expanding the way I am, that I'm going to have to do something. Even black pigs, the inside of their ears not black. And I've got a couple different colors of ink that I'm going to experiment with tattooing their ear.
Okay, yeah.
On the inside.
Interesting.
So that's an upcoming project.
So that would be I'm ignorant on that whole process, but I assume that's something you do at just after farrowing, when they're much easier to handle. Your tattooing at a piglet age and
right, exactly.
Well,
I mean, that's what I'm going to. Yeah, that's what I'm going to try to do. You know what I mean? When I pull them off my arm or something like that, I'll do that. Now I don't know. Again, this is going to be a big experiment, because I don't know how many people tattoo pig ears. Probably not too many.
Yeah.
I think that's big, but they make white. Exactly. But they do have white ink now. So I'm thinking it's going to work. Even if their skin's kind of dark. Hopefully.
So is that a sequential number? Is that some sort of code? It's
letters and numbers.
Yeah.
So they'll have a herd letter and then an individual number after that.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Man, that's a lot to manage, and sounds like as it grows, then it's going to become exponentially.
Yeah, it's really getting to that point. That's why I'm changing up my stuff with my website. I'm going to barn to door, and they're setting up a site for me. So my website is actually going to be down until probably another week or so.
Okay.
I mean, by the time this airs, it'll be back up, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that website is 6oaksfarm.com, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. So yeah, everybody can check that out and see how that's how David's pulling that
And
off.
my Facebook page is pretty. I do a lot on that. I have a 6 Oaks Farm page on Facebook too.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, we'll definitely share that down in our show notes so people can see the links to that and be able to follow that as well.
Great,
okay,
thanks.
so one more point there. So. Again, I have to ask. I know we talked about in the past that when it comes time to ship these pigs, you've got a reliable trucking source there that you've worked out.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have any help on the farm? Is this 100% you?
It's mostly me. My girlfriend's here. She does a whole lot, probably more than she ought because she works full time.
Oh yeah. Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a lot to manage.
It is. It's a full time. I mean, I got flowers growing out there because, and the farm store and different species of animals, and I sell a lot of eggs and vegetables. I have a market garden, so I don't sit down much.
So is this is totally off tangent, but is this harder than being a commercial electrician, or is a commercial electrician harder?
I wouldn't change a thing. I tell you, it's a lot more work. Towards the end of my career, in the electrical career, I was a project manager, so I was in the office most of the time.
Oh, pushing paper, yeah.
And yeah, exactly. And it was all right. You know what I mean? It was, they paid good and benefits, whatever truck. But I don't know. I didn't like sitting in the office that much.
Yeah.
So I was already doing it part time, and I saved up and figured I'd give it a go. And if not, I could always fall back.
Yeah.
But so far so good.
Well, the natural progression here. So as we've talked about, you've really put all this work into isolating your testing. You're constantly testing your breeding capabilities and what you're seeing there. And you shared with us in our last episode that you've now to the point where you've isolated so many good traits that you're actually working with a geneticist to actually develop a breed. Can you tell us more of that?
Yeah, they're from Clemson. They it's a top secret project, and
okay, well, and, scratch that.
No, I'm kidding. So when I started using the large black and the Tamworths, every once in a while I was getting a spotted pig, and I noticed they always sold first, and I kind of liked them anyway, and they always seemed to have a decent body type, and there was always something a little special about them, but pretty pigs. But so I started messing around trying to breed that specifically for that for that color and that conformation I was looking for, and they were already from good pastured stock by that point. So they did real well in pasture, and they grew very much like my crosses did anyway, but although I did introduce another breed, but I can't tell you what it was until everything's
yeah, absolutely
squared away, and I get, because when they come out they'll be pedigreed, which is going to be probably soon, probably by spring of 2020 we should have pedigree litters. But so I was kind of was messing around with it, and I talked to a friend, and I'm in South Carolina, so we're not too far from there. A friend of a friend do them, and I got with them, and it just kind of blossomed from there. They've been a tremendous help as far as helping me out with who to breed to who, because I know a few things about it, and I know about like my end of it as far as breeding it and what you're going to typically get, and some generalization kind of things, where color comes from, that sort of thing. But they knew a whole lot more about it than I did.
Yeah, so this goes a little bit beyond just the little Punnett square that you learned in biology.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I've been taking their fine advice, and so far so good. We've got some real nice specimens out there, and we're getting some consistency, and we're going to have our first purebred litter coming up. What's this, June? Probably maybe October, November, somewhere around that time.
Yeah.
And once we get them growed out a little bit, we'll probably start releasing some of them, and saving the ones we want to save, and try to keep everything going, going how it has been. We have 2 lines now, so we still have to expand into a 3rd line from there, but so far so good. It's working out better than I planned, and I thought the way that I was doing it was going to take like 20 years.
Yeah.
So they've helped speed things along a bit.
Oh, great. So I assume then that as this new breed comes online, gets pedigreed, all of that, then the game plan would be to market that to your existing client base and even beyond, and then just try to really introduce this breed to anybody that wants to take on those characteristics, I assume.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, generally, as far as the conformation and the meat type and that sort of thing, it's pretty much what I'm producing now in a I guess a prettier coat.
Yeah.
Basically what it is. But if people down the road, I hope that they would want to take them on and help with breeding them and expanding on it.
That's exciting. Yeah.
Hopefully there's some people out there who'd be interested in doing that. But I think once they're out there and people see what they look like, there's already a breed out there that looks just like it. Their conformation's a little bit different. Mine tend to be longer and a little bit taller, but they have not arrived here yet. But over in Europe, mostly I think in England, there's a breed called the Oxford Sandy and Black. If you want to Google it, they pretty well look like that. They're a sandy red color with black splotches on them.
Yeah,
they're pretty interesting.
Oh, great. So this new breed will, like you said, has all the characteristics that you look for on your farm when you're selective breeding, but then just has this additional appearance characteristics that make it unique.
Exactly. So, me being all about consistency, I want to be able to, put a pig out there that people can breed this one to that one, and they're going to get a spotted litter of pigs.
Yeah.
Just like they're going to get the well marbled red meat and the 14 to 16 teats, taint free genetics, basically taint free genetics, and the fat cap size and the growth rate, and pretty much what I'm doing, but in a nicer coat.
Yeah, it's like the whole package, brains and beauty
exactly.
at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Got it. I might have to run with that.
There you go. Well, excellent. So obviously you said you've been in this for 6 years and you've done a lot of work in getting to where you are. So that's a pretty big path to follow. Where you are now in your experience and the information you have for somebody just starting out that says, okay, I'm either just going to start out to maybe there's 2 pieces of advice here or 2 different types of advice. Somebody just starting out says, I want to raise some pigs for the family. Where do I start if I'm just going to raise something for the homestead or for the small farm for personal consumption? Or the person that says, well, I want to do that, but I think I then want to get into a commercial operation with that. What would your advice be in starting with the breed?
Starting with the breed, I mean, as far as, like right from the start getting piglets, before I tell people, anything about getting piglets, I get phone calls all the time because I sell a lot of piglets, and I tell people all the time, you got to, set some goals, how many pigs do you think you might want to sell, what you think they might cost, and, and all that sort of thing. And then, apply that to what you want to buy in a pig. Do you want a lard breed, or do you want a lean breed, or do you want an in-between breed like what I have?
Yeah.
Or, you got to set some goals rather than just go out and buy, the neighbor's pigs that have never seen a blade of grass. Because they might not do so well in pasture. They might, but why risk it? Why put that money out, when there's a pasture pig operation somewhere probably not too far, or I can deliver to your door,
right, exactly.
That you can get, that you can get pigs and start out with something good. And, I always tell people, spend a couple extra bucks, go a little bit farther if you have to, but start out with good genetics, because even if you're going to eat them at the end of the year, it still matters.
Yeah, and I feel like you're speaking directly into my soul here, because when I got started, I remember telling the farm, it was one of those things, flip open the ad bulletin or the paper, find somebody that's selling piglets and say, let's get into this, let's do it, like a dummy. Right. I gotta go head first into stuff. Yeah, ready, shoot, aim is usually my mantra. But,
But as far as, from there getting into the commercial side of it, I would, and I tell people this a lot too, is to find your market and grow into it. You know what I mean? Find out what the people around you want, raise a couple pigs, see who buys what, really get as much feedback as you can from them, that they, what they liked about it, what they didn't like, and develop, your product to that, to what that market might want.
Yeah.
They might be used to buying. I'm in the South. Pigs are cheap down here. You can get piglets down here for $35 or sometimes $25 a piece. It's not hard.
All right. Is that David Crafton's price delivered?
No. No, my pigs are a little more than that. But again, that's what I was saying. Spend a few dollars more because at least in 9 months you're going to have a pig that's, actually less than 9 months, probably 7 months, a pig that's ready to butcher, what weight it's going to be. You have an idea what kind of meat you're going to get. It's going to be marbled, and that sort of thing. So at least there's some things you can be assured of, when you know what you're buying up front.
Yeah, that's solid. Because I think, I remember kind of my attitude and other attitudes of people that I run into were like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to spend a lot of money on something that I may not even get to survive, to finish, because I just don't know what I'm doing. And so they're scared.
Right.
But from your perspective, and I really like that point, is the additional investment up front really isn't that large when you look at buying a mutt from Joe Farmer down the street to actually buying something that has some pastured pedigree to it. It really isn't that much more of a financial commitment, and it can go so much further, especially if you get to the point. I've always liked the advice of buy 3, raise one for yourself, sell the other 2 to pay for that one, or save one back that you're going to breed and try to start from there. And that makes a lot of sense. If you get to that point, you get to that turning point where you say, oh, wow, I'm glad I invested in this because I'm that much further ahead of the game. You don't have to start all over again.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I talk people out of breeding pigs all the time.
Yeah.
It's not because they're competition or anything like that, because I'll say if they want to breed pig, I'll sell it to them. You know what I mean? I'll do it. That's on them. But, I tell people all the time. I had a lady come by, a couple months ago. She, was wanting to buy two gilts and a boar, unrelated, which I can provide. And, I got to talking to her. She'd never raised pigs before. She wasn't sure about defense, all this stuff. And I told her, I said, get you a couple feeders, the first time, and, you'll learn whether your fence is good enough without worrying about your breeding pig running down the road with her piglets.
Exactly.
And, so you can test your infrastructure, see how much it's going to cost in feed, and then apply that. And she did. She bought a couple feeders, and she's about 4 or 5 months into raising them, and she was by here the other day, and she's like, I don't know if I want to breed pigs or not. I was like, well, you did the right thing.
Book her that real quick. Yeah.
All right.
So do you ever get in a situation where people ask you, and do you oblige them? Do you sell pregnant sows?
No, I don't. No, frankly, with expanding, I've never really had the, chance to, or opportunity, or whatever you want to call it, to have one to spare.
Right. Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah, and I've always wondered. I've had several guys that I've talked to. In fact, several people that I've interviewed. That's how they got started, and again, to each their own. But I always thought, wow, there's no way I would have had the stones in the first place to do that, because knowing that how many piglets you could have, it's like, okay, first time I've ever had a pig on property. It's a sow, and she farrows, a month or 2 later, and now you could have 10, you could have 12, you could have 15 pigs running around.
Yeah,
it's like,
and their instinct is to move away from, any kind of commotion, feed areas, other pig. Like I said, most of my pigs will go out to pasture. So, if you get a sow that's pregnant, she may go through the fence.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean, to get away from wherever she's at, because that's just her instinct to do it. And you're like, man, where'd my pig, and where'd she go? And then 2 weeks later, she's going to turn up with, whatever piglet she has.
Yeah, no doubt.
Waiting for you to feed her.
Yeah, that could stress you out pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I remember the days of, hey, the neighbor call and say, hey, your pig's in my front yard.
Oh my, I've been there. We've all been there.
All right. Well, David, I appreciate you taking the time. I won't keep you too much longer here. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us again, and I would love to, if you're willing, I'd love to invite you back as this new breed line gets pedigreed and gets gets online and you're ready to go, and talk to you about that some more. And again, I'd love to talk to you about logistics and even once your website's up, how you're doing sales through there. There's just so much information I feel we can glean from you, and if you're willing to have you come back on here, and we'll pump some more information out of your brain there.
Absolutely. Just let me know when.
Well, all right. Well, I'm going to, as I mentioned before to everyone, if you want to check out David Crafton's, what he's got going on at Six Oaks Farm, for some reason I get stuck on that plural there. Check out Six Oaks Farm, multiple oaks, singular farm, sixoaksfarm.com, or actually look on Facebook at Six Oaks Farm as well, and you can find his information there. Well, David, again, appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, take care. Well, I really appreciate David coming on and talking. I think I could talk to that dude for hours. Just a lot of good information. Really appreciate him taking the time to talk with us again. If you wanted to know more information about him, you can check out links to his stuff. Again, I'll put those in the show description. You can find him through those means. And if you like the podcast, please consider giving us a review. Give us a rating on whichever feed device you use, whether it's Stitcher or iTunes or Google Play. Again, that helps people find us. If you have suggestions or comments about anything that we've talked about, or potential new guests or potential new topics, you can go to our website, redtoolhouse.com, click on the Pastured Pig Podcast link and use the form, or feel free to just email me directly at troy@redtoolhouse.com. That's Troy, Troy, at redtoolhouse.com. You can email me directly and just let me know what you think, comments, suggestions, whatever. I want to find ways to improve this, make it even better. So I appreciate any feedback that you all want to send our way. Well, hope everyone's having a good week. I hope things are going well on the farm. Take care, everybody.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast, or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.
I was just going back and